Take it off?
What's the point of that? But he's done what's creative writing.
One. Everyone, my name is Radek Balsan, and I'm one of the many lecturers here at William Blue, delivering a number of different subjects, students that are enrolled in hospitality management courses. The objective of this session is to facilitate your revision for your upcoming hospitality exam, which I'm sure you're excited about. You will have the opportunity to participate in 4 different sessions. The first one we're going to start today with is focused on food safety and hygiene in hospitality, followed by a second session that focuses on workplace health and safety. The third session then will address what it takes to work with colleagues and customers effectively in teamwork in hospitality. And the last session is then dedicated to probably the most exciting component of hospitality, and that's food. We only got 1 hour for each session, so without further ado, let's get started. First, my heartfelt welcome to all of you here in the room, and also to all those of you who are not with us today and are watching live broadcast of this session remotely. This first session focuses on food safety, so I think the most appropriate way to start is why do we actually care about food safety, and what's the big deal? I'm confident most of you have already learned about food safety in school. So what is the primary objective of worrying about food safety? Anyone? 2? What's the question? Why do we need to worry so much about food safety? Why is that so important? See, here at William Blue, we take food safety quite seriously. We're preparing young professionals for their careers in hospitality industry, and food safety is a big component. Why do you think is it such a big deal? Why do we worry about food safety? What's the ultimate objective of us worrying about food safety? That's right. Food poisoning is the key word I was looking for. The ultimate objective is to eliminate or at least minimize the chances of someone suffering the consequences of food poisoning. Hands up, who has ever been a victim of food poisoning? There's quite a few of you here. Perhaps it happened at home, perhaps it happened when you went out in a restaurant, had a lunch or dinner with your family or friends, or maybe it happened during your overseas holidays. What was the experience like? Terrible, not a pleasant one. At best, food poisoning can be unpleasant. We're suffering symptoms such as diarrhea, stomach cramps, vomiting, headaches, fever, nausea. But at best, food poisoning can also be fatal, and that's what's very important. The consequences can be quite severe. And of course, it also represents other risks to businesses that might expose their customers to unsafe food, litigations, a lot of loss of customers, and so on. The food safety is so important to us here in Australia that we actually established a independent agency that oversees the food safety and all the aspects pertinent to food safety in Australia. It is an independent statutory agency, a bi-governmental body. It's called FSANZ. Has anyone heard of FSANZ before? Yep. What does FSANZ stand for? Food Standards Australia and New Zealand is the correct answer. FSANZ gives us this interesting statistics, and that's that about 5.4 million people in Australia suffered the results of food poisoning. 5.4 million people in Australia. It's a fairly staggering statistics, if you ask me. That means about 15,000 people every single day, each year, get sick as a result of unsafe food handling practices. And therefore, the Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, which is an agency that goes across two governments, and that's Australia and New Zealand, have given us a system and sets of rules that we follow when working with food. FSA covers every single step that food can be exposed to, that it has it, that food can be exposed to, from the point that food is produced or manufactured, all the way to the last stage when the food is actually served and consumed by people in restaurants. That means customers. We call this the from farm to the table, or from the farmer to the plate approach. The main concern FSANZ places on is a high-risk food. And the first question I'll probably have to ask here is, what is high-risk food? What is the food that we classified as a high risk?
Like
Raw meat, yep. Cooked rice, I really like that. That's correct. Interestingly, the #1 culprit of food poisoning in the whole world. Any other types of food that we could consider to be high risk? Dairy products, absolutely. You are absolutely correct. The food that is classified high risk is any food that is prone to spoilage quickly. It's a food that allows bacteria to grow fast when exposed to a certain temperature. We call this the danger zone, which you've probably all heard of. And it includes items such as seafood and fish, raw chicken, poultry, any raw meat, as well as cooked meat, casseroles and meat dishes. Also, as you correctly said, dairy products such as milk, cheeses or yogurt, eggs and egg dishes, such as mayonnaise, or items that contain eggs and mayonnaise, such as potato salads and so on. And the big ones are, of course, cooked rice and cooked pasta. While seemingly not dangerous items when uncooked, they can become quite dangerous when they are cooked, especially rice that consists of or includes bacteria that we call the B. cereus. That's #1 of the fatalities or reason for fatalities in the whole world as a result of food poisoning. Of course, not everyone is exposed to the risks of food poisoning in the same way. I've heard people saying, I have left the chicken overnight on my desk, and we ate it the next morning, and it was perfectly fine. No one got sick. Or I heard someone saying to me in the past, I know a guy that never washes his hands, and he never gets sick. So we need to understand that not everyone is susceptible to food poisoning the same way, and there are groups of people that are at high risk of suffering the consequences of food poisoning. Who are these people that we need to really be mindful of when serving or preparing food? Absolutely. People suffering immunity deficiencies is the correct answer. People that have illness, especially when it pertains to their gastric or their digestive system. The elderly citizens, people that might have a lower immunity due to their age. Young children, absolutely. And really important one, pregnant women, absolutely correct. Bacteria that is dangerous to humans, we generally call this the pathogens, can make an adult just maybe sick or might not have a severe consequences, but can be fatal and very, very damaging to unborn babies, for example, fetuses. So we need to be extremely careful when we deal with food and take food safety very seriously. Now, FSANZ, which I mentioned previously, has the people working in this agency gave us the set of rules or approach, a system that is called the HACCP. Anyone heard of HACCP? Yeah, I see a lot of nodding. What does the acronym HACCP stand for? There was an attempt. Let's try again. Everyone, nice and loud. Hazard, analysis, critical control point. That's correct. Well done. Hazard analysis, critical control point is a system that aims to identify and determine whether a food safety hazard can actually pose a risk to our customers, and what is to be done when a food safety hazard is identified, how is it to be controlled, and what steps should be taken if there is a case or instance of a loss of control. Essentially, the HACCP is a system that governs all the workplace-related procedures that affect the food handling, and all the stages that the food can possibly go through in restaurants and hotels, which is the environment for which we are preparing our young professionals to work in. It means dealing with the steps that are involved in the process of ordering and purchasing food, also receiving and storing food, issuing and processing the food, the stuff that happens in the kitchen, and of course, service and the sale of the food. So FSANZ addresses these steps. We call it the 7 steps of inventory management cycle: ordering, purchasing, receiving, storing, issuing, processing, serving, and selling. And there are many, many procedures that pertain to each of these steps. And since we only got 1 hour for this session, we're of course not going to have the time to cover all of them, but we're going to have an overview of the most important ones. The number one thing that we probably should stop at and focus on is when we're trying to eliminate or minimize the potential risks associated with food hazards, we need to understand what the food safety hazards actually are. And we know the hazards, as many, can be broken down into essentially 3 main groups or 3 main categories. Can you think of any type of food safety hazard? Please. The biological, that is one. That's right. Any other types? Chemical and physical. Well done. Take it one by one. We'll start with the physical food safety hazards. Physical hazard is any contaminant in a food, any item in a food that really shouldn't be there. I'm sure all of you have experienced or heard of someone experiencing a situation when they found something in a food that shouldn't really be in that food. Whether it was a packet of lollies, packet of chips, bottle of beverage or can of drink, or perhaps your dish in the restaurant. I'm sure everyone heard of someone or experienced the situation. What could be an example of physical contamination? Very common. What do we find in our plates? The hair that can fall from a chef's hat. That's correct. What else could be an example of physical contaminant? A nail. Someone clipping their nails. That's quite rare. But you know, when it comes to the fingers, we've had we'd have an instance where a chef cut himself, put a Band-Aid on, and then the Band-Aid, because of the moist in the kitchen, fell in a pot with the food. And that's actually one of the reasons why we always use Band-Aids with a distinct color in the kitchen. What is the color? Blue, because it's the least likely color to be found in a food. And also, you know, of course, items such as a little piece of metal that can fall off a scara when washing the dishes and not correctly rinsing them. The second group or category of food safety hazard is biological. And biological, as you correctly said, includes obviously the introduction of a bacteria or microbes, as we call them, in the food. All food has bacteria in it, and some bacteria is actually good for us, but there's bacteria that can cause damage. Any bacteria that's bad to people is called a pathogen. And pathogenic bacteria can be introduced to food or can grow in the food. So we need to do anything that we can possibly in the kitchen to minimize or prevent this from happening. How could a bacteria could possibly make its way into the food? Can anyone think of ways? So transferring the bacteria from yourself when you're sick, absolutely. When you suffer gastro-related illness, yep, absolutely. The word I was looking for is a cross-contamination, absolutely. The transfer of bacteria from one source into the food is what we call cross-contamination. And now, once again, back to the examples. How could that occur? Sneeze in the food? Dirty hands? That's a quite interesting one.
Is food stored on together?
Incorrect storing procedures, that is correct. And we know that, for example, on processed food or uncooked food, such as raw chicken, will have a high content of bacteria. Likely, the bacteria that you are to find in the chicken would be Listeria or Salmonella. And, for example, even working on a chopping board or using utensils to work on a raw chicken and using the same utensils, imagine the chopping board that you just chopped up the raw chicken on to be used for slicing up the vegetable for your salad, means you're transferring the bacteria from one food to another. You said while storing, absolutely. Cooked and uncooked items could be stored. Sometimes at homes we only have one fridge. Now how do you store food that's been cooked along with the food that may still be raw? If you were to put it on the shelves, where would you locate it? You put the cooked food on the top, the raw on the bottom. Why would you do that? Why? Absolutely. So that the juices from the raw food don't drip into the cooked food and don't cross-contaminate the food items. Any other ways we can contaminate food? Possibly? Not washing hands, did you say? We've had that already once, and since you said it once again, I'd like to take this opportunity to reinforce our understanding of how important it is to wash our hands thoroughly. Now I'm looking for 3 volunteers in this room. 3 volunteers, come over here, guys, that are confident that you're keeping your hands clean. We don't take this lightly, in our college. We've got 1. Anyone else? Come on, people, don't be shy. Come over, please. Thank you. And 1 more person. Come over. I've got 3 girls. Excellent. What's your name? Maria. Maria, Teresa? Phoebe. And Phoebe. Maria, Teresa, and Phoebe, I'm going to ask you to show me your hands. What was the last time you washed your hands? This morning. Okay, excellent. What I've got here is a special liquid. It's called Glow Gem. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to see how clean or dirty your hands really are. But don't worry, you'll have the opportunity to.
Baby wipe considered like washing hands?
Is a baby wipe considered washing hands? No? Jesus. All right, so what I'd like you to do is to take this liquid, it's a nice and orange liquid, and spread it around your hands. Phoebe, Teresa, and Maria. You moisturize your hands, that's right. And just around and on the top as well. Make sure you moisturize your hands properly. All around the back of your hands and in between, as if you were to wash your hands. Or something nice and orange now. Don't worry, it'll wash off. We've got a special light here. It's a UV light, UV torch. And what it does, it allows us to see all the germs on your hands. So just a very quick look here. Oh, there is a lot of purple, a lot of glowing germs on your hands and at the back as well. What we're going to do is, I'll give you the opportunity, you haven't spread that properly around, so I'll give you a little bit more of that. Just put it on the back of your hands. And you'll get the opportunity to go and wash your hands now, because you said you're confident in your ability to wash your hands well. We'll see how good you really are. Okay, so off you go, bathrooms, go and wash your hands. And wash them thoroughly. All right, so back to our food safety hazard. We addressed the physical, we addressed the biological, and the last category of hazards that food can be exposed to is, you can see that on the slides, it's chemical. How could chemicals contaminate food? Absolutely. Cleaning chemicals in the kitchen can get in the food, especially even in a simple task such as washing dishes when they are not properly rinsed. The residue of the chemicals on the plates or the utensils can contaminate food. Any other ways? Is chemicals often present on the food or in the food? Some chemicals are used when preserving food.
Like if you get like the green part of the potato.
That is correct. And that some food have actually chemicals in it already. They're naturally occurring chemicals that can act as poison to humans. This includes, as you correctly said, green potatoes. That's why we never eat green potatoes. But also items such as rhubarb leaves that can be quite dangerous. Some types of mushrooms can be deadly to humans, or even red kidney beans, which might not seem that dangerous. See, you have to cook red kidney beans for at least 10 minutes to eliminate the poison. And this is what we teach young professionals in the industry to be aware of here at William Blue. To go back to the HACCPs, or the HACCP, the system that we have that have been introduced to us by FSA and Z, we're going to quickly look at some of the key procedures that we do when it comes to food handling. The first thing I'd like to look at is storage of food. When storing a food. Food can be stored in various areas. What are the three key areas that we're storing food in? The fridges, the freezers, and the dry stores. That's correct. What's the difference between a fridge and a freezer, really? There's only one difference there, and that is the temperature. That's correct. We're going to look at this a little bit more in detail. First of all, let's really focus on what affects the food storage and the requirements for food storage. There are key four sort of areas that we need to be mindful of. Number one is the shelf life and the perishability of the food. A shelf life really refers to the duration of time from which food is being produced or manufactured until the point in time where it is no longer fit for human consumption. Now, of course, that's determined by various factors, the quality of the food itself, the way we store it, and often it's indicated to us when the food is packed by used by date or best before dates. That is correct. What's the difference between used by and best before on the labeling?
Used by is that it should be like legit by then, so estimated time, and best before is it can be consumed after the.
That is absolutely correct. There are essentially three categories of food. Food that's perishable, food that's semi-perishable, and food that's generally classified as non-perishable. Food that's perishable will always indicate a used by date. It means the date by which we have to consume the food, and it is not legal to process, to cook, to serve, or to basically is undesirable to eat a food that is past its used by date. Best before is used for perishable food. Semi-perishable foods, sorry. A semi-perishable food is a food that does not require strict storing conditions. That includes things such as the bread or the vegetable. We don't put eggs, but it still has date that we should probably be mindful of. Best before is a date that guarantees that the food will have its own freshness up until the date and might start losing its qualities after that date. Still can be safe to be eaten. That's correct. But one very seriously, and that is the used by date. The second factor that we have to be mindful of is the storage conditions. The storage conditions that involve things such as temperature, light, humidity and moisture, or space that's required to store the food items, because these are all the factors that need to be taken into consideration when we really want to tackle the issue of microbes and pathogens in the food. Let's start with the first one, and that's the temperature. You said the main difference between fridges and freezers is the temperature. You see, we've got the code given to us by FSA and Z that actually stipulates what the temperature should be in a fridge. So is there anyone who knows what the correct temperature in commercial fridges should be? below 5 degrees from 1 up. Absolutely correct. So it's 1 to 4 degrees. Why don't we want it to be colder than 1 degree? Because at 0 things freeze and they're not really useful to us. Why don't we want the temperature to be higher than 5 degrees? Because at 5 degrees Celsius, we enter into a scary zone. That's right. We call it the danger zone. A danger zone, which you know is the temperature between 5 and 60 degrees. That is correct. And it's the temperature that bacteria loves. Bacteria grows in, and therefore we need to strip the bacteria from the privilege of enjoying that. Light, humidity, and space are all other factors that need to be taken into consideration when storing food. And of course, the storing procedures as well. Number 1, segregation of foods to avoid cross-contamination. And number 2, the procedures that involve, for example, stock rotation. There's one system that we use, we call it the FIFO. FIFO, have you heard of that acronym before? First in, first out.
What's the difference? Because in hospitality, we're doing the FIFO, we're doing like a LILO, like last in, last out. What's the difference?
Essentially, the concept is the same. Last in, last out, first in, first out refers to the same concept. And there's the stock rotation system. Whatever is received by hospitality workers or receiving clerks or the chefs in the kitchens first is to be utilized first. And that's to maintain the freshness of the food and also minimize wastage and possibly cross-contamination. Now, if you understand this concept, you're probably as smart as I am, and when you go into supermarkets and buying yourself food that is about to expire, what happens to your hand when you're reaching out for your jar of yogurt? It goes probably all the way at the back, because you know the items at the back will have a longer expiry date. They will last you longer. The reason why that is because the personnel that is restocking the items in the shelves will put always the items that arrived or are to be consumed first at the front. We're all aware of this, right? Of course, the very important thing, and one of the most important factors, regardless of anything else that we'll have on a food storage, is your attitude. Is how seriously you take it. It's the level of your expertise, and it's the level of your care. Attitude essentially makes 100% difference to what you do and how you do things. So that's probably something you might want to note as well. Besides storing food, we also need to be mindful of all the processes involved during preparing, the stage of preparation of food. When we're preparing food, there are 4 things that we have to focus on, and that's to clean, to separate, to cook, and to chill. These 4 things: clean, separate, cook, and chill. What do we need to clean? What do we have to keep clean? Number 1 thing is the premises, the kitchens in which we operate. That refers to the walls, the floors, the workbenches that have to be scrubbed, washed, and sanitized, and of course all the tools and utensils that we use during the times of preparation of food. The food itself has to be cleaned as well. We've got practices, the things that have to be washed in a certain way, and the things that we never wash, and also the one very important is personal hygiene. Now at this point, I had 3 volunteers here that were very confident about the way they wash their hands, so I'm going to stop there for a second and look at the personal hygiene of Teresa, Maria, and Phoebe. Are they with us? Can you come over, girls, again? All right.
I'm mentioning my fingers now for me touching my iPad, so.
Oh, touching your iPad.
I have to write now.
This is what often happens, isn't it? We wash our hands and we sort of think, that's it for the day. And we've got this UV torch. Again, it's a special light that will reveal to us how many germs are still on the girl's hands. Now, if you washed your hands properly and thoroughly, there should be none. So let's have a quick look. Should we have a witness for this? Do you want to be my witness here? So let's have a close look at all the germs living in your hands. All right, so can you see that? There's still a lot of germs. You missed this part here. Let's flip your hands around. And in between your fingers, and look around your nails. Still a lot of germs around there. Can you see that? Ooh. And look at that. So all that orange and the expression of your face says it all. Let's flip your hands again. Have you used the soap? Have you scrubbed your hands? I would not allow you to work in my kitchen. Show me your hands. You're scared too. Well, let's have a look. Not bad, not bad. It's a little bit here. See, the hand don't finish here. You have to go all the way there. Let's flip, oh, there's a bit there under your nail. Let's flip your hands, and that's not too bad. You want to be very careful around your nails, but your hands seem to be, oops, one of the cleanest out of the trio here. Thank you very much, guys. Give them a round of applause. Well deserved. Guys, this only goes to show that, it is not about what it feels like when you're washing your hands. You have to really be thorough. Scrubbing, soap as a big thing needs to be used. And it's often something that we're not taking too seriously and something we sort of tend to skip on. Washing hands. All right, when it comes to keeping our hands, the food, or the premises, or the utensils and tools clean, there are a number of steps that we follow in order of the effectiveness when it comes to killing the bacteria. That includes scrubbing, washing. Scrubbing obviously refers to the physical element of removing the dirt. Washing refers to using water, especially hot water, and detergent, means chemicals, to remove the dirt. Most commercial dishwashers will be calibrated to operate in a temperature between 43 to 60 degrees, which is still danger zone, means it doesn't kill the bacteria. So washing doesn't really mean the process of killing germs. It means to removing the dirt. It's the process of rinsing, removing the chemicals from the process of washing, and also commercial dishwashers, for example, will be calibrated to much higher temperature when it comes to rinsing, generally 83 degrees, because that's the temperature at which we can 83 degrees rinsing. Most commercial dishwashers will be set to 83 degrees, and it's because at that temperature we actually eliminating vast majority of the germs that are present on the tools, utensils, plates, pots, etc. So essentially, the rinsing in a dishwasher acts as a sanitization process. Sanitization is the first step of really eliminating the bacteria, or will be dramatically reducing the presence of microbes and the bad ones, we call them the pathogens in a food. A little bit more serious than sanitization, that becomes the process of disinfecting and sterilization. Now, disinfecting and sterilizing essentially is the same thing. There's a very small difference. Disinfecting refers to the process of eliminating majority. I'm referring to really 99.9% of bacteria, while sterilizing means completely removing 100% of bacteria that might be possibly present, and also the spores in which the bacteria could survive, and that is something we generally don't push for in hospital industry, but something that will be probably relevant to surgeons or using surgical instruments where the safety have to be taken to another level. So remember, don't let germs move in. Clean your routine. The trio here was a good demonstration of how often we underestimate the importance of cleanliness, whether it's the utensils, the facilities of our hands. At the beginning, I said that there are 4 things that we worry about when preparing food: cleaning, separating or segregating, and then chilling and heating up. When it comes to the segregation process, or the element of segregation during the food preparation stage, we need to be aware of the fact that food can cross-contaminate uncooked and cooked food, raw meats with cooked and processed meats, etc. So we have practices that we have to follow to keep the food safe. One of the most common one is, for example, in the preparation area, to use different chopping boards for different type of jobs. Hands up who only has got one chopping board at home and uses that one chopping board for everything. Oh, most of you have a number of chopping boards. Oh, that's good to hear. How many chopping boards have you got at home? 8 chopping boards. Are they different colors? What colors are they?
Red, white, yellow, blue,
Red, white, yellow, blue, brown and green. We have different colors of chopping boards for doing different types of jobs. What do we use the red one for? We're using the red chopping board for processing things such as raw meat. Then we've got a blue one that's used for seafood or raw fish, absolutely. The yellow one is used for poultry or cooked meat. Green ones for salads and vegetables, the fresh vegetables. Brown ones can be used for rotisserie, that is a brown meat or cooked meat, or roasted vegetables. And we've got a white one, generally is an all-purpose chopping board that can be used for bakery or dairy products. So we're segregating food not only during the stage of storing, but also during the stage of processing. While processing food, we also need to be mindful of the temperatures that have to be sort of stick with and followed. And again, FSA and Z within their HACCP systems have given them they've given us a guide of rules that we have to follow. One of the most important was the 2-hour/4-hour rule. Hands up, have you heard of this before? There's about 50% of you have heard of this before. 2-hour, 4-hour rule, what does that refer to? I only wish everyone else could hear this because it was 100% correct. Well done. It's a rule that basically suggests that any food that is classified as a perishable or high-risk food cannot be exposed to a temperature within the danger zone, which is the temperature between 5 and 60 degrees for a period longer than 4 hours. So what can happen is this. If the food is exposed to a temperature up to 2 hours, it is safe for us to use it, to process it, to cook it, eat it, or even put it back in the storage, means the fridge. If the time to which the food is being exposed to a danger zone is between 2 and 4 hours, then it is safe for us to eat it, or process it, and serve it, but it is no longer safe for us to put it back in the storage, in the fridges. And if the food has been exposed to temperature, as I said earlier, between 5 to 60 degrees for a period that's longer than 4 hours, and the only thing we can do with it is to throw it out. That is correct. Well done, everyone. At this point, I'd like to take this opportunity to test how much attention you paid and how much of what I said stayed in your head, or perhaps on your notes. So we've got a quick quiz. You could use your QR codes on your phones to log into our eating session that allows you not only to view the slides, but also to participate and interact with me at this point. So is everyone on seating? If you are, let's have a quick quiz where the first question is, bacteria would best grow in what type of food? We've got 4 options here. The first option is foods that are high in sugar and fat, acidic food like pickles, food that are high in protein and moisture, and dry foods like crackers and cereal. And we can see that most of you have logged in C as the correct answer, which is the correct answer. Food that are high in protein and moisture, food that bacteria to grow in, and it's food that's prone to spoilage and food that's classified as a high-risk food. Second question we've got is, in terms of food, which of the following is a high-risk food? You've got 4 options. Select your choice now. Whoa. We've got 4 options: bag of potato chips, bag of flour, fresh vegetable, and bowl of cooked rice. This is incredible. 100% of you got this one right. No one got the wrong answer. Oh, there is one. Bag of flour. Bag of flour wouldn't be classified as a high-risk food. It'll be probably classified as a semi-perishable item. but the correct answer, of course, is a bowl of cooked rice, an item that often contains Bacillus cereus, which is one of the biggest culprits responsible for food poisoning, eventuating in deaths or fatalities. The third question we've got here is, how cold should it be in the fridge? 3 options. Select your answer now.
Yeah, can you send the ambassadors out to Rome? I'll just add a few of them.
You can see there's 2 options are being selected. Careful in your exams. Sometimes questions and answers can be misleading, especially in multiple choices. You want to be very mindful of this. Read questions and answers twice and think before you select the right answer. Of course, majority of you selected the correct answer. C is the option to be selected. It's between 1 degree Celsius and 4 degrees Celsius. We've got the next question, and that is, how cold should it be in a freezer? So remember, we had the temperatures about a fridge and a freezer. I don't think we covered that part. We skipped that part, didn't we? Well, even without me addressing this in detail, most of you had this correct. The correct temperature for freezers, as prescribed by FSA is between -18 and -24 degrees. So the correct answer here is below 18 degrees. That is correct. We, of course, have different types of freezers as well. There could be a little bit of differences. 12 degrees to 16 degrees is used for ice creams. But -18 to -24 was the correct answer. And I believe this will be our last question for today. Under the 2/4 hour rule, at which point can we either use or sell a food item or also return it to the refrigerator? At which point it is safe to use it, sell it, but also return it to a refrigerator? Be very careful. We're talking about returning it back to the fridge. What's the maximum amount of time that we can have the food exposed to a danger zone before we are still okay to put it back in the fridge? Okay, most of you have locked your answers in, and of course the answer was less than 2 hours. When a food is exposed to temperatures of between 5 and 60 degrees, which means the danger zone, for longer than 2 hours, it is no longer okay to put it back in the fridge. It can be processed, can be used, but it cannot be stored again. There's a next question we've got here, and that is, what does the used by mean? What does a used by mean? The options that we have are, food can be sold after this date only with a discount. Food may not taste the same after this date. Read the answers carefully before you select the answers. Food after this date must be prepared with extra caution, or food has to be eaten before that date. Only one answer is correct, and 3 of them are quite misleading. And no one is selecting the answer. Everyone? Doesn't load in. Okay, so technology let us down. That's fine. Show me your devices, everyone. I can see that everyone logged in the answer. Oh, you haven't logged in the answer because you actually couldn't get to that question. Now it's loading. Okay, so there you go, a little bit of delay. I'll finish earlier. Is that okay? You rushed me and I was stressed out. Oh, there it is. Most of you looked in D as the correct answer. You can see a couple of you have selected the B and C, which are not the correct answers, so be very careful. You don't want to be selecting the wrong answers in your HSC hospitality exams. The answer, the used by or expiry date, it refers to the date after which it is no longer suitable to consume the food, and the food has to be eaten before that day. It is no longer fit for human consumption. Excellent. Guys, at this point, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, for working with me throughout this session. And I'd like to allow you now to ask questions that if any one of you might possibly have regarding the topics we covered or regarding the material that you anticipate will be addressed in your HSC hospitality exam.
We have a question from our YouTube chat.
Excellent.
The question is, are potentially hazardous foods just the same as perishable/high-risk foods?
Absolutely correct. A perishable food doesn't necessarily mean a high-risk food, and of course there's a different levels of perishability. Thank you for that question. Perishable food, that is high-risk food, are all the food that is prone to spoilage and is food that will be no longer fit for human consumption if it's exposed to a temperature between 5 and 60 degrees for 4 hours or longer. Thank you. And we went through the examples: the raw seafood, fish, raw chicken, meat, eggs and egg dishes, cooked rice and cooked pasta are all examples of high-risk food. Food that develops pathogen fast, pathogens, the bad bacteria that can cause food poisoning and make especially certain groups of people, including pregnant women, small children, elderly, or people with illness, suffering the consequences of food poisoning. And I'd like to point out that often people go by their nose, you know, when they look at food and they assess the quality of the food. It does not necessarily mean that if food looks, smells, or tastes okay, that it still is okay. And that's why we have to be very mindful of these items. And one person sick, another person can die from. Okay. Thank you for that question. Do we have any other questions?
Referring back to before when we did the hand thing, you got to use hot water or warm water or?
When washing your hands, it's a very good question. When we're washing our hands, what's the process? I've seen people walking out of the toilet, pressing the button where the water comes out. They do this and walk out. You know, what does it look like? Did it look like I just washed my hands? Not at all. If you're handling food, the process of washing hand is really washing your hands thorough. You have to go in between your fingers. You have to scrub your hands thoroughly. And yes, the chemical, which is the soap, will always be required to eliminate, to reduce the bacteria on your hands. A lot of people now carrying in their bags sanitizers. So we know sanitization, sterilization, and disinfecting is the process of decontamination, which essentially means killing the bacteria or the pathogens present on their hands. But correct, you need to use hot water and you need to wash your hands thoroughly. One of the interesting things when we wash our hands, how do we dry them? What's the safest way to dry our hands? Hot air is probably the second best solution. Yeah. Paper towels are the safest way to dry our hands. That is correct. In the kitchen, clean paper towels. Do we have any other questions? We do?
Yes, we have another question from our YouTube chat. Are biological, chemical, and physical types of food safety hazards similar to the types of contamination, biological, chemical, and physical, and how do they differ?
Okay, so how do physical, biological, and chemical contaminants differ? Well, they differ in the nature. A physical contaminant obviously refers to any physical item that is found in the food that shouldn't be there. We talk about the examples here: the hair, the nails, the Band-Aids. And of course, physical contaminants can often also represent a biological contamination. Biological contamination essentially refers to the introduction of microbes, which is another word for microorganism, the bad ones, the pathogens, to food. The microbes that will be introduced to food are likely to grow to levels that will be toxic to humans and can render the food inedible and can cause food poisoning. So physical essentially refers to just the physical element or physical item that can be found in the food. Biological refers to the actual bacteria in the food, and chemical contaminants refers to the obviously chemical substances that can be introduced to food during the stages such as washing and not correctly rinsing the food, or even food is treated, you know, your apples have a wax on, and even watermelons, oranges, and other fruits would be coated with the chemicals that will eliminate the presence of bacteria. This is something that needs to be really taken into consideration. I'll give you an example that you might, a bit of food for thought. There was a case where the chemicals on the surface and bacteria on the surface of the watermelon actually contaminated the melon and the food that was eaten while the chef was actually slicing the watermelon. Because essentially what happens is the knife, as you cut through, takes the bacteria from the surface of the watermelon and spreads it throughout the watermelon. The same thing with oranges, kiwi fruits that could be treated, etc. So chemicals can be introduced to food during the stage where farmers might be trying to use certain pesticides or preservatives, but also during the stages of washing and preparing the food. And we also talked about the naturally occurring chemicals in food. The red beans, the green potatoes, the rhubarb leaves, or mushrooms, for example. I hope I answered that question. Anyone in the room has any other questions that you'd like to ask? And please don't be shy. It's a big day for your HSC exam.
Hello. Look, sometimes we do buffets,
Yep.
you know, at school when we cater. If we were to put a potato salad on a buffet and it was there for about 90 minutes and we refrigerated it, could we use it again the next day at room temperature, and for how long?
Thank you very much for asking that question. It's a very valid point, and a very good question. When it comes to items such as potato salad, just think about the ingredients that really go into that item. Number one, eggs. Number two, mayonnaise. And how is it prepared? Using your bare hands to mix all the ingredients together. Very high chances of cross-contaminating the food with bacteria that might not be even present in the food. Now, when it comes to items such as potato salad, that's certainly a high-risk item. But now, regarding your concern, 19 minutes on a buffet, can we still serve it the next day? The answer is, while you need to be vigilant, generally, yes. 19 minutes is still safe to refrigerate, to put it back in the fridge. In hospital industry, item that is being exposed to the danger zone for 19 minutes would be still classified as okay to eat, but we need to be also careful about this. It's not about how long the potato salad was exposed to the room temperature. It's about how each individual ingredient in that salad was exposed to the room temperature, and that's cumulative. That includes, the temperature. For example, all the ingredients are of perishable nature, including, for example, the ham you might be chopping in, etc. During the process of storing. Because you see when stock arrives to restaurants or hotels industry, there's a couple of minutes. There's a small window of time during which the food items are exposed to the danger zone. Each individual ingredient, we have to combine, this is an accumulated duration of time. So it not necessarily means that 19 minutes on a display, because it also means the time it took to prepare it in the kitchen, the time it took the chef to mix all the ingredients. And that goes way past those 19 minutes. So as a rule of thumb, when items such as potato salad are to be served, you're probably best off only taking the portion or the amount of food that you are intending to serve during that time, because you might not even be able to account for all the minutes that were the items in the salad exposed to the danger zone during the preparation stage. And again, we already have to take all the minutes that we have accounted for. So then you will no longer have 4 hours, certainly, to have that on display. You only have probably 2 hours or 1 hour. And we, of course, always take the rule of thumb. If in doubt, throw it out. That's correct. If in doubt, throw it out. And you see, there was a case, restaurant tables in North Sydney across the bridge, you might have heard of. A chef reheated a sauce. It was an asparagus sauce 4 times during one day. He smelled it with his nose and he assessed it. And he said, my nose knows. It was perfectly fine. Yet, when he served the dish, the asparagus sauce, and it looked perfectly fine, there was a customer that didn't make it through the next day. He was an elderly person, 60 years old man, that didn't wake up the next morning. The autopsy revealed that there was a high content of toxic bacteria in his digestive system that was introduced to his body through this source, and he died as a result of the food poisoning. If you ate that food, you probably will get only sick or might not even have a symptom. This person died because he was a high-risk person. And you see, when it comes to items such as potato salads, that is something we need to be really vigilant about. We need to be very careful for. So thank you very much for asking that question. My recommendation would be really, really careful because you don't just thinking about the time the food is being on the display, on the buffet, on the smorgasbord. It's the entire time from when it was delivered, when it was processed, and it can be often, without you even realizing, more than 2 hours. And if that's the case, then we can no longer store a perishable food back in the fridge. Did that make sense? Thank you. Do we have any other questions? No? Well, at this point, guys, I'd like to thank you very much for your took some notes that might hopefully assist you in your revision for your HSC hospitality exams. I wish you good luck with those exams and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.